I stood by the altar, waiting. The minister was here. My best man was here. My parents were here. My brother and his family were here. My fiancé's parents were here. His little sisters were here. His best man was here. Our groomspeople were here. All our friends were here. My grandparents had driven down from Wyoming, and his grandfather came from St. George. My aunt couldn't make it, appendicitis, but we were recording it and would post the video online after the ceremony, so she was kind of here. But my fiancé, Stephen Adler, wasn't here. The panic had reached a level 4. It hadn't been that high for years. I'm Xavier Clark, age 22, a junior and a business major with a minor in animal science. I was thinking of becoming a vet, but I let my long-term boyfriend, and now fiancé, Steve, talk me out of it. The pianist sat at the piano, nervously playing some classic song. The day was sunny, but hot as only Vegas could get. Good thing we were indoors. The yellow and white flowers and little white lights had been arranged by my sister-in-law, Celia. My brother, Jake, and I had built the arch Stephen and I would say our vows under, and Celia had decorated it with more flowers and lights. But my fiancé wasn't here. The panic had reached a level 6. My mom and his mom had made the food for the reception, which we would hold right after the wedding. Between my family and his family and all our friends and co-workers, we had 70 people total. My 3-year-old niece sat on a chair, kicking her legs and guarding the pillow holding the 2 gold rings. The bakers had arrived at 8 this morning to set up the cake, a 3-tiered chocolate masterpiece with fresh flowers and French buttercream bonbons and chocolate-covered strawberries. My fiancé wasn't here. The panic had reached a level 7. It was about to go nuclear, just like when I was 16. It was 10:15 on a Thursday morning, what should have been the most perfect day of my life. We were supposed to be married 15 minutes ago, have the reception and a light lunch, then Stephen and I would drive to Los Angeles for our honeymoon. A text appeared from Stephen, my fiancé. Something cold slithered down my spine. Been doing a lot of thinking. Sorry for the late notice, but I won't be there today. Found someone who isn't as high maintenance as you. Goodbye. My world crashed. The panic reached nuclear level. My shoulders kept shivering. I couldn't stand still. My brother walked over, and I showed him the text. He read it out loud, his eyes immediately moist. Celia hugged me. Everybody walked over and hugged me. Mom was crying. Dad was swearing. Fire flashed through Celia's eyes and she yelled, "He dumped you by text on your wedding day? Stephen is an effing coward." I said, stuttering, breathing heavy. My heart was beating at race car speeds. I started crying. Mom's eyes grew wide. "Honey, are you okay? Where's your medicine?" "In my backpack," I said. My legs started shaking, my stomach knotted up, and soon breakfast wouldn't stay down. My hand began rubbing my arm and rubbing my arm. "Listen to me. It's going to be okay," Celia said, helping me to a chair. She's a full-time nurse and arranged her schedule to be at my wedding. "Head between your knees. Take slow, deep breaths. Hold my hands. Tell me the number." The number, a game from my therapist where I rated my anxiety from 1 to 10. These last 2 years, since I had met Steve, it had been mostly under control. I stuttered, 8 or 9. My brother took hold of Dad's arm. "Xavier hasn't had an attack like this for years. I thought it was under control." "So did we. Check the groom's room and find his backpack," Dad ordered. My brother called for the groom's people to help him, and they ran out of the chapel. Steve's mom came over to me and sat beside me. "I feel responsible. What can I do?" I tried to say something and remembered the first time I'd met Steve. Just after I graduated high school, my therapist made me a bet. One of the frats was having a get-to-know-your-neighbor party, and he would buy me a steak dinner if I went. If I didn't go, I'd have to buy him one. I was broke, so I had to go. I went, sticking to the shadows, but somebody sought me out. His name was Steve, and he was a year older than me. We got to talking. He was a fitness influencer with a presence on all the major social media platforms. His followers were in the high 6 digits. His goal was to break 1 million. The frat had a DJ, an open area for dancing, and lots of weird lights. We went dancing, and I had fun. I reread the text from Stephen. Found someone who isn't as high maintenance. Goodbye. The panic surged to a 10. I remembered that night when I was 16, 2 years before I met Steve. The only other time in my life the panic had been a 10. My heart beat so fast it sounded like speed techno. I can't breathe, I said, barely aware of the voices around me. A sharp pain shot up and down my left arm. I gripped my wrist, trying to endure. Xavier, Celia said, squeeze my hands and focus on the now. Tell me your symptoms. My chest hurts, my left arm hurts, I have a headache, and I can't breathe, I whispered. My sister-in-law held my wrist and counted. Heart rate is way too fast. Xavier, you're safe. Is he okay? What's wrong? Is he having a seizure? The minister asked. Acute panic attacks, Mom said. Steve's mom looked away. What do I do? My dad scowled and said, he hasn't had an episode in years. Because of this, he'll never step into a church again. That's the least of our problems, Dad, my brother said as he entered the room. Me and the groomspeople looked everywhere. We found the backpack, but we couldn't find Xav's medication. They're still looking. I tried calling Xavier's therapist, Mom said, but got no answer. We have to get Xavier away from the crowd. Is it like a seizure? Steve's mom asked. No, it's an episode, Dad said. Something warm trickled from my nose. A tiny bit of crimson dripped and splattered on the white cuff of my shirt. I stared at it, ran my finger across my nose. It came away bloody, and some of it got onto Celia's dress. I froze. Dad? My sister-in-law hugged me and whispered to my dad. It just got worse. It changed from a drip to a drizzle. I couldn't catch my breath. My chest felt like it wanted to explode. 11, 12, help me. I couldn't stop crying. Damn, Celia said and hugged me closer. Xavier, you're safe. We're here. Relax. Repeat your mantra. You're safe. Somebody, call an ambulance. What's wrong? Steve's mom said. Acute stress triggers nosebleeds, squeezes the airwaves, and if it's bad enough, Xavier will stop breathing and have a heart attack, Mom said. But he's only 22. People don't have heart attacks that young, Steve's mom said. Most people don't have a birth defect in their heart, Mom said. I convulsed. Dad's eyes shot wide open. Dear Lord, it's starting, Dad said and shoved his hand in mine. Xavier, don't let go of my hand. I have 911 on the phone. An ambulance is on its way, Grandpa said. My chest, really? I gasped, and I don't remember anything else. I woke in a dim room, shirtless. Some sensors were on my chest. The soft sound of something mechanical was next to me. An IV poked into my arm. The heart monitor softly beeped in slow, even tones. My brother was on one side of me. My mom lightly snored in a chair across the room. Xavier's awake, my brother said. Where am I? I said, my voice sounding more like a wisp of wind than a voice. Every joint in my body ached, and my throat was incredibly sore. Mom was at my side, her makeup smeared with tear marks. You've been in the hospital for the last 12 hours. What number? A 1, I said. That's because of what they gave you, my brother said. We can't find your medicine, and your roommate went back to your apartment and he can't find it either. Did you bring it? First thing I packed in my backpack, I croaked. Could it have fallen out? My brother asked. It was in the bottom, I said, and drowsed. Suddenly, my mind was elsewhere. I was 16. The last night I was normal. It was months since I had gotten my license, and I drove my parents' old silver Chevrolet sedan. The windows were down, the volume was up. I had spent an hour polishing every bit of that car, so our first date would be special. The road was clear. I was driving to my boyfriend's house. We were going to see a movie and get ice cream. I turned left, across the intersection. The sun was in my eyes. I was driving. When I woke again, Celia sat in the chair beside my bed, looking at the doctor's charts. She patted my hand and said, "Hey, sleepyhead. Good news. The paramedics got to you just in time. It was only a mild coronary. How about some water?" "I'll get some," Grandma said. "Where am I?" I asked. "Take a guess," Dad said. I touched the oddness on my chest, a small, freshly stitched scar and bump just under my left collarbone. I almost sobbed. My wedding present was a pacemaker. The last thing I heard as the edges of my vision darkened, Celia said, "Xavier, sleep as much as you want." I was in the hospital for 3 days, always in and out of consciousness. This was supposed to be my honeymoon. Happy, happy me. I woke the next day, laying in the back seat of my grandparents' Chevrolet Blazer, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. The horror of my wedding day came back to me, but I remained still. Nobody would want to date me now, let alone marry me. Like Stephen said, I'm too high maintenance. Grandpa was driving their SUV. Somehow, I wore a t-shirt and shorts with a soft blanket over me. The soft whine of the tires on the road relaxed me. I focused on the soft conversation in the front seats. Grandma said, "Xavier's still asleep. Can you blame him for having an attack? And he only knows half of the story." Mom spoke through the speaker on Grandma's phone, saying, "The cardiologist saw the video and recommended as close to zero stress as possible, and suggested a complete social media blackout. She's looking for a specialist in Wyoming, and I'll get back to you about that. Where is Xavier's phone?" "It's in my pocket," Grandpa said. "I'll lock it up when we get home, and we'll disconnect the router so there will be no internet." "Good," Mom said. I spoke to Xavier's boss at Barkin Books and explained the situation. This will count as Xavier's 2 weeks of vacation, and to call him if he needs more. I contacted the university counseling department. Xavier is now part of their Students to Watch program, and if he needs someone to talk to, he just has to call, even if it's long distance. They also agreed to talk to his professors. When Xavier comes back, they'll work with him about alternate deadlines. "What about the wedding fees?" Grandma asked. "Everything was already paid, so we are out the money," Mom said. "We and our former parents-in-law are discussing options, including legal action, but don't tell Xavier anything until he's stronger. I can't stop worrying about him, and I don't think I ever will. Is it wrong of me to hope he can live a normal life?" Grandma leaned over and said, "Just be grateful it wasn't worse." "Xavier was living a normal life, until the wedding," Grandpa snarled. "If you see Steve, punch him for me. Doesn't he realize how much harm he's done?" "A lifetime's worth," Mom said, stifling a sob. "When should we tell Xavier about what Steve did?" Grandpa asked. "What did Steve do?" I tried to say, but my voice came out as a croaked whisper. "I am so happy to hear your voice," Grandma said, and glanced back at me. "Everybody, Xavier is awake. You've slept for 5 hours this time. How are you feeling?" "Peachy. My head hurts. Everything else hurts too. Where am I?" "What is the last thing you remember?" Mom asked. The panic began again. I barely remember the hospital. I guess the last thing I really remember is the text from Steve saying he was leaving me. I had a panic episode, didn't I? "Worse. Heart attack," Grandma said. "Don't worry, we'll see you through it. We called ahead, and General Schlotsky is waiting for you." "We'll be in Princeton in a couple of hours," Grandpa said. "We can stop in Evanston if you're hungry." "You scared us, but the doctor said you'll be fine," Grandma said. "No, Grandpa, I'm not hungry," I said. "We're going to Wyoming? But there's so much to do, the wedding." "Honey," Mom said, "your dad and I and Steve's parents have everything under control. Everybody understands and no one blames you. You're taking a few weeks to get your head together and recuperate. Don't argue." "What about Steve? What happened?" I asked. Mom paused, and Grandma clucked her tongue. Grandpa said, "Near as I can tell, his folks are embarrassed and furious at the same time. Not good for the digestion. I wouldn't want to be in Steve's shoes." "Let us worry about him," Mom said. 1 to 10, what are you?" I felt the gnawing edge of panic inside me, and said 4. "How bad did it get?" Grandma said. "Off the charts. Did you ever find my meds?" "They were in my backpack," I said. It was Mom who spoke. "I'm sorry, honey. Your brother and your best man and all the groom's people looked for them, even in your backpack, and they couldn't find them." "Mom, that's impossible. I always have it with me, because—" I said, and stopped. My meds made me sleepy all the time, so I couldn't get a driver's license, but they did keep me calm and stable. Did somebody steal them? "Your grandparents have an emergency prescription, so don't worry," Mom said. Body aches, headache, the odd antiseptic taste in my mouth, nausea. I had forgotten how drained I felt after an episode. Times that by 10 with the way I felt. It had been years since I felt anything like this. Scratch that. I'd never felt anything this bad. Steve had dumped me at the altar. A gnawing darkness opened inside, threatening to swallow me whole. I turned my head so my family wouldn't see the tears. Grandma reached back and held my hand. "We sent Branson, one of our ranch hands, to pick up lots of apples for General Slotsky. You'll like the guy. Just sleep until we get there." The calm purr of the engine almost made me forget. Steve had dumped me the day of our wedding. I had told him about my condition shortly after we started dating, about the episodes, and about my heart. I told him about what had happened when I was 16. I had trusted Steve, and now he was gone. No wonder Steve dumped me. I'm the high-maintenance, crazy, emotional wreck. When I get like this, I'm a useless lump. It was too much work to love me, so why would anyone try? I drifted back to sleep until we arrived at Princeton, Wyoming. Population 5 grand during the tourist season. If any town had fallen off the face of the earth, it was Princeton, the town that time forgot. East of the Teton Mountains, it hadn't changed for at least 50 years. Old stores, old buildings, old pine trees, a city lost in the forest, a place that moved at its own pace. It only got internet a decade ago, and that wasn't always working. The first cell towers arrived 5 years ago. The place is beautiful, but remote. We drove on a dirt road for a mile or so before it opened into a large clearing. My grandparents owned a chunk of land that they call the Outback Ranch. It's a life completely different from Vegas. It's also the only place I've lived that can get completely silent. The ranch had a 2-storied red brick manor, 2 red brick guest houses, a regular barn for the cows, a stable with stalls for 8 horses but only 5 are used, a milking barn also for the cows, 2 chicken coops, a side pasture, a big pasture, a vegetable garden, a flower garden, a rose garden, miles of riding trails, and a large garage with mechanic's bay. They had an apartment for the ranch hands above the garage, but only one man stayed there now. The others lived in town. My grandparents owned 20 head of dairy cows, 5 horses, 2 dozen chickens, a couple goats, 2 big dogs, and a couple of small dogs. All that, and the best views of the mountains known to man. I remembered the place well. My parents had sent me here to recuperate after the car accident 6 years ago, and I had lived here for a year. The Blazer parked near the front door of the house, and my legs felt like limp spaghetti. Grandpa and Grandma had to support me to get me in the house. Grandma made me sit down on their overstuffed couch, and in seconds the day had caught up to me. Again, and I fell asleep, dreaming of what could have been. I thought I heard a conversation, or maybe I dreamed it. "This him?" an unfamiliar voice said. "Yes, he's a mess, both inside and outside," Grandma said. "They gave him a pacemaker, and he's only 22. "Do you think Xavier will be all right?" Grandpa said. "No, look at how pale he is," Grandma said. "He's so fragile. Now this, he'll be devastated once he learns." Grandpa paused as if he were checking something. The little snot posted again. "If Steve shows up, I'll wring his neck. Look." There was a pause, and Grandma gasped. Grandpa swore under his breath. The other guy simply said, "Damn, I thought I was having a bad day." "Lock the phone and the router in the safe," Grandma said, and come up with some story to tell the guests why there's no internet. I'm afraid for the boy, Grandpa said. For his own sake, Xavier must never learn. Agreed, Grandma said. Let's get him up to bed. Branson, Grandpa said, give me a hand. It must be a dream. Strong arms picked me up, cradling me gently as Branson carried me up the stairs. His hands were firm and rugged. He smelled musky and of oiled leather, and his breath smelled of peppermint. I thought I heard a whisper. Don't you worry, my friend. I'll keep you safe. Funny, I did feel safe in his arms. It was only a dream. It had to be a dream. The doctor had issued a new medication for my heart, and my therapist had refilled my missing prescription. I was exhausted. It was 2 days later when I felt strong enough to get out of bed. A knock on the door. Grandpa entered carrying some clothes. Time for breakfast. You need to come back to life. Some of these should fit you. He set the clothes on the bed. Grandpa looked at me, not moving on the bed, and sighed. You have 5 minutes to get dressed because you have a visitor. 5 minutes later, I sat on my bed, still exhausted, but dressed. Grandpa yelled up the stairs, Need some help? I went downstairs by myself, and Grandma made me eat a breakfast of blueberry pancakes, a couple of scrambled eggs, some bacon, real maple syrup, with fresh brewed coffee. My visitor waited outside. General Schlotsky had come to see me. Or more accurately, Grandpa had brought the general to me. Schlotsky is a 6-year-old Palomino mare. She was light chestnut color with a cream-colored mane and tail. General Schlotsky couldn't have children. Because of that, her value had gone down. Of all the horses my grandparents owned, she was the gentlest and my favorite. My grandparents had purchased her as a young filly, so when she grew up, guests could learn to ride. What happened instead was me. General Schlotsky became my physical therapist and best friend. I took care of the horse, and the horse took care of me. I named her. I fed her. We went for long rides together, walked together, and I opened up to her. Let's see if you remember how to ride, Grandma said, placing the stepladder beside the horse. They only used the ladder to make it easier for noobs to get into the saddle. Climb up. They'd already saddled the horse, and Grandpa helped me get positioned. It took my body seconds to remember how to ride. Once in the saddle, I realized how much I missed this. Schlotsky and I started with a slow walk, Grandpa worriedly holding the reins. After a few minutes, he let go, and me and the general walked about the place. Riding a horse is like riding a bike. Your body never truly forgets how. For the next week, I built my strength up by riding the general around the main grounds. Until one day, I waved at my grandparents, gave them a big smile, and galloped off. Xavier, slow down, get back here. You had a heart attack a week ago, Grandma yelled. I waved again, but didn't slow down. At least he's feeling better, Grandpa said. I'll call Branson. With the cool wind on my face and the even rhythm of muscles galloping underneath me, for the first time in days, I felt alive. Stiff, but alive. My grandparents have a small track that guests use to ride around. I leaned in and whispered in General Schlotsky's ear, Time for some speed. We galloped around the track before we trotted off on one of the trails. When I got tired of riding, I walked beside the general, holding her reins, and talked to her. I brought a couple of apples and fed them to her. Another horse trotted towards us, a red chestnut stallion named Red Rover that everybody called Red. A man I had seen around the ranch was in the saddle. You really know how to make your grandma worry, he said. Time for lunch. Are you one of the new hands? I asked. Branson Lancashire, at your service, he said, giving me a nod. And you are the guy who had a really bad day. Branson was tall, at least 6 feet 2 inches, with skin browned by living in the sun, and brown hair with sun-bleached highlights, and black eyes that seemed ready to smile. He wore an old wife-beater stained by too much work and a rugged pair of Levi's and well-worn boots. The dirt and calluses on his hands never came from video games. He was strong. His physique didn't come from lifting weights, but from hard work. This man lived outdoors and out loud. There was an honesty about him I found refreshing. A hard-working, honest man. What could be more sexy than that, I thought, smiling. Your grandmother is furious with you riding off like that. She asked me to ask you what number are you, he said. I stared at the snow-tipped mountains and said, 3. Unless I think about the wedding disaster, then I'm a 6. Don't think about it then, he said, flashing me his smile. My strength coming back, I climbed back in the saddle, already a little stiff, and we rode side by side. We rode like that for an hour, casually talking about nothing. Branson drew even with me and said, I'm only a stranger, but that might make it easier. You need a fresh set of ears to hear your story, and mine come cheap. What's the price? I asked. There's a bar just down the road. Buy me a beer when your grandparents let you leave the premises, and maybe we can have a game of pool, he said. You don't want to know me. I'm bad luck, I said. Branson shrugged his shoulders and said, because you're gay? Or because your fiancé humiliated you? Or because you have heart problems? I bet the real reason is that you're afraid. I have too much baggage, I said, staring at the back of General Schlotsky's head. That just means you need someone to help carry it, Branson said. It's just you and me in the middle of nowhere, and when you leave, we'll never see each other again. Start talking. I let the reins relax, and I stared at nothing. I said, it started when I was 16. I was going to pick up my boyfriend, and we were going to see a movie. I was excited and nervous and scared. You know how first dates make you feel. The sun was in my eyes, and I didn't see that the light had changed red. A car sideswiped me, and my car rolled on its side, driver's side down. I was trapped, bleeding from a head wound, thinking I was going to die. It took the firemen an hour to get me out of the car. The stress of that triggered my first panic episode, and that triggered my first coronary event. They discovered that I have a birth defect in my heart. Something about how part of my heart didn't develop right. What did you mean by first? Branson said. I've had minor panic episodes and a couple of major since then. I had a couple of coronary scares back in high school, but I didn't have my second coronary until my wedding day. I pulled down the collar of my shirt a little to show Branson the scar. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Guess what my prize is? My very own pacemaker. You're right. That is a lot of baggage. Then what happened? Branson asked. I never know when I could have an episode, I said. It's kind of scary. Because of the medication, I can't drive. Tell me about your wedding day, when Stephen dumped you, Branson asked. My voice began to warble as the emotion tried to leak out. I haven't had a full episode in years, but the stress that day triggered a bad one. I barely remember the hospital and the drive up here. Branson reached over and laid his hand on mine. I don't need the details to understand how hard that day must have been. We rode in silence until we got back to the stables, and while I was brushing down the General, and while Branson was brushing down Red, I broke the silence. So you see, it's not worth getting to know me. Like Stephen texted, I'm high maintenance, I said. Branson frowned. And you trust the word of a stuck-up no-good thinks he's God's gift to mankind cheating scumbag who doesn't even know how to ride, let alone hold his beer? I bet he would even fall off General Schlotsky, and Red would toss his butt off the ranch. That made me smile. For the next 2 weeks, whenever I rode the General, Branson rode with me. Maybe I should have been annoyed, but I liked Branson. I also wrote thank you letters to my parents, my grandparents, my brother and his wife, and my niece, my doctor, my therapist, my roommate, even Steve's parents, for saving my life. I called my brother, and he helped me find the addresses. I also sent the wedding ring to Stephen, care of his parents, with a note saying, goodbye. One day, as we were riding, Branson asked me, "How do you feel about Steve?" "Weird," I answered, tapping the pacemaker scar. "The wedding seems like years ago. Do I want to see him again? I don't think I even like him anymore." "What if he begged you to take him back?" Branson asked. "Yippee," I said. "Does that mean I win another pacemaker?" Branson sort of smiled at me and he said, "Can you dance?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "I'm not a doctor, but my prescription is more practical," Branson said. "Line dancing and Michelob. If line dancing is too much, maybe some slow dancing. You need a little fun because your life has gotten too serious." "What?" I asked. This time Branson grinned. "Tonight, Scotty's Bar and Grill, 7 p.m. Time to change your head. You buy the beers, I'll buy the steaks, and let's dance." Over lunch, we told my grandparents. Grandpa said, "It's about time you got out of the house." Grandma said, "You nearly died and now you want to go on a date?" Branson said, "Don't worry, I'll watch over him." Since they still wouldn't let me have my phone and Grandma worried about me constantly, my grandparents tagged along. Double dating with your grandparents? Can life get weird? I guess I can't blame them because of what nearly happened. Scotty's Bar and Grill was a steakhouse by the highway. Hardwood paneling painted light gray, a concrete floor painted black, and leather seats that were almost black. Golden mood lights lit the tables and the booths and the dozen seats along the bar. Behind the bar was a mirrored wall with shelves filled with hundreds of bottles. There were really that many varieties of whiskey? A cleared-out area was made for dancing, and a dozen people were on the floor already. Another area had 4 pool tables and 4 foosball tables. A small stage with a 3-man honky-tonk band stood a little separate from the bar. The head bartender was named Haley, a middle-aged woman who kept the drinks flowing. Branson found us a table, and as we sat, Haley sauntered over and said, "Branson, long time. What's it been, darling? A week? Who's your cute friend? Is he new in town?" "Xavier, meet Haley, the local mom," Branson said. "Nice to meet you, Haley," I said. "Xavier Clark, from Vegas. Give us 2 mugs of what you have on tap." She scribbled something onto a small notepad. "What you boys want to eat?" "What's good?" I asked. "The cheddar burgers," she said. "Cheese straight from Wisconsin and pickles canned by the Emersons last summer." "Sounds good. Make mine medium," I said. "Medium it is. Same for you, Branson?" "It is," Branson said, and handed her a 5. "Tell the band we need a couple of slow dances. Xavier just got out of the hospital, so we don't want to push it." "Hospital? No wonder you look like a good wind would blow you over," Haley said. "Let's get you some real food so you can get your strength back. Branson, how do you want your burger?" "Well done, and throw in some of your sweet potato fries. Enough for both of us," he said. "Will do," she said. "Xavier, right? You look familiar. Been to these parts before?" "My grandparents run the Outback Ranch, and I lived with them years ago," I said. "Maybe, but I've seen you recently. Do you have a brother that looks like you?" she asked. "We don't really look alike, and he lives in Vegas," I said. Haley walked off, giving the ticket to the chef. A few minutes later, the band leader said, "A little romance for Branson and Xavier. Enjoy 2 in a row, boys. Then afterwards, ladies and gents, get ready to get your feet moving." Branson stood, taking my hand, and led me to the dance floor. It took a moment to relax together, and we slowly swayed with the music. We weren't the only couple. We weren't the only gay couple either. Branson kept it slow and held me close. I laid my head on his shoulder, and we whispered. His arms were strong about my back, and I felt safe. For the first time, I began to wonder if there was something between us. All too soon, the music ended, and we didn't go back to our seats. We stopped by the pool table and racked up the balls. We got in a couple games of 8-ball before Branson noticed Haley bringing our food to the table. We joined her. She said something odd. "How about that? Xavier from Vegas, a real-life celebrity here at Scotty's. Keeping him for yourself, Branson, or can anybody pose for a selfie with him?" She was looking at me. The panic jumped to a 4. "I'm not a celebrity," I said. "Yes, you are, honey," she said. "Your face is all over the web." "Haley," Branson said, "that's enough. He doesn't know." "Know what?" I asked. "Is this what everyone has been hiding from me?" Branson nodded, almost looking guilty, and he said, "We didn't want you to have another heart issue." Haley took a seat at our table and said, "Branson, Xavier needs to hear what's happened before he finds out the hard way. Besides, I need to hear the whole story, but make it quick." Branson looked at me and said, "Sooner or later you would have heard. I just hoped you'd be a little bit stronger. Haley, Xavier has a heart condition, and the stress of being dumped at the altar almost killed him. Do you have the video?" "My husband always tells me my mouth will get me in trouble," she said. "Xavier, I'm sorry I said anything, but I wasn't the one who made the connection. Jerry, the band leader, did. This is what's on the web and why you're famous." Haley pulled up a video on her phone and played it. It showed a selfie of Stephen in a tux, and he said, "Hello, all my followers. This is my entry for the cheating challenge. I expect to get a ton of views and finally get up to 1 million subscribers. The rules are simple. Tell the person you love that you're leaving them for somebody else. 15 minutes later, tell them it was only a joke. Nobody at my wedding, except my best man, knows what's about to happen. This will be good." The image shifted to a hidden camera in the chapel, and it focused on me. Stephen continued speaking. "Imagine a chapel in Vegas. I'm about 5 minutes away. That's my fiancé, Xavier. We are about to get married, but let's see what happens when I tell him it's over. He's got panic issues, so I had my friend sneak his medicine out, so I expect a major, award-winning, over-the-top freak-out. Don't worry, I have roses and chocolates on standby, and to make it extra special, I've even upgraded our honeymoon to a trip to Miami. This will be great." The camera switched to another view, and another. Stephen must have hidden at least 4 cameras about the chapel, and they all looked at me. Branson shifted seats to sit next to me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You don't have to watch this. You lived it." "Stephen did this to me as a joke? I want to see the rest of it," I said. "Ready, everybody?" Stephen said, and sent the text. "Timer starts now." There was me, getting the text and reading it. It happened fast. I started crying. My parents and family surrounded me. "Xavier will be going nuclear any moment. Just wait," Stephen said, his voice hyper with excitement. In the video, I clutched my chest. Celia helped me to a chair, and Grandpa was on the phone. Only 1 minute had passed. "That's it. Where's the freak-out?" Stephen said. A few seconds later, I passed out. Celia listened at my chest and gave orders. Several people cleared the chairs away, and my brother and Dad laid me down. Celia ripped my shirt open and began heart massage. "Serious, Xavier?" Stephen yelled. "Really? CPR? Ladies and gentlemen, my boyfriend is a drama king. I expect at least 100,000 likes." The ambulance arrived 2 minutes in. By 3 minutes in, the paramedics had me loaded on the gurney. By 3.5 minutes in, Celia climbed in the ambulance and took off. Sirens roaring. "Maybe Xavier wasn't faking," Stephen said. Mom was crying. Dad held her. Grandma spoke with some of the guests, and then she and Grandpa and my brother took off. I assumed to follow the ambulance. Steve's mom and Dad looked like they were in shock. My best man, he's also my roommate, took charge, telling everyone what had happened and that the wedding was canceled. It was only 5 minutes since the text. "Our wedding is canceled?" Stephen said. "That did not go like I expected. What should I do? If I go over and find out what's going on, I break the challenge. Did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? If you think I should go over, hit the like button. If you think I messed up, hit the dislike. I'll update later. I'm rushing over." "He thinks I was faking a heart attack?" I said. And Branson found my hand and squeezed it. Any feelings I had for Stephen evaporated at that moment. All that was left was a dull ache inside my chest. and a little scar on the outside of my chest. "Pause it, Haley. Xavier, what number are you?" Grandma said, taking a seat next to Haley. 6 or 7, I said. I was a joke to him? He was using me because he wanted to get better ratings or something? Are there more videos? "Take deep breaths," Branson said. "Any chest pains?" "No," I said, shakily lifting my beer and sipping it. "Haley, play the rest," Grandpa said. Haley resumed the video. Stephen was at the nearly empty chapel. "A quick update," he said. "Right now, the wedding is off. My parents won't speak to me, even though I explained that this was only the cheating challenge. Nobody from his side of the family will do anything but yell about how much money my actions cost. Don't they understand it was a prank? They're blaming me for everything. All I know is that they rushed my boyfriend to the hospital. I know he had silly little panic attacks and a heart problem, but I never thought it would be like this. I'll update more later." Next video. Nighttime. A hospital in the background. "Hi guys, I'm updating about 12 hours later. I spoke with Xavier's brother, and he told me that Xavier woke up for a few minutes, then passed out again. I tried to explain that it was a joke, nothing but an online challenge, the cheating challenge. Everybody's doing it. Nobody will understand that this was only an accident. I didn't know this would happen, but they are blaming me anyway. It's not my fault. If I had known that Xavier's heart was this fragile, I wouldn't have done it. It's Xavier's fault because he should have told me how serious this was. The hospital isn't even allowing me to see Xavier. They said it might trigger another episode. I am his fiancé, so I have the right. It just makes me so angry that nobody realizes it's not my fault. I'll update later." Next video. This time, it was in Stephen's apartment. "Me again. Next update. I spoke with Xavier's mom, and she said Xavier's heart had stopped. He's being moved to a special care center. She didn't tell me which one. I talked to his boss, and he said that Xavier is on a leave of absence for medical reasons, duration unknown, but he said that the last guy who had a heart attack was out for 6 months. 6 damn months. That means that the money we spent on the wedding is wasted, and the money I spent on Miami is wasted. Xavier won't answer my calls or texts or emails. I don't even know if he's conscious. I spoke with his roommate, and he told me that Xavier's folks had cleaned out all of Xavier's stuff and put it into storage. They'd help pay rent for a couple of months, but they didn't know if Xavier would ever return. Nobody will tell me where my boyfriend is or how he is, and he won't call me. Why doesn't anyone understand it was only a joke? How can these people be so selfish?" "Turn it off," I said. "I don't want to see any more." "What number are you?" Grandma asked. "Maybe a 7. I'm just sad," I said. "Was everything we shared a joke? I feel so empty." Branson held me and I held him. Surprisingly, I wasn't panicking. I was numb. It was like somebody threw a switch and turned my love off. I asked the one question that seemed kind of funny to ask. "Did Stephen get to his 1,000,000 subscribers?" "He posted this video today," Haley said, and hit play for another video. "Hi guys, good news, bad news. Good news first. I spoke with Xavier's dad, and he said that Xavier is enjoying the new facility, is fully conscious, but needs assistance to get around." I looked at Grandma and Grandpa. Grandpa grinned and said, "Nobody said it had to be a medical facility." Grandma gave me a smile, quietly chuckling. "The general is really good with physical therapy." "Xavier has lost a lot of weight," Stephen continued, "but the therapists are working with him and believe he'll make a complete recovery. Because of all your concern, my subscriptions are now over 1,000,000. Thank you very much. And now, the bad news." Stephen held up a wedding ring. "My parents gave me Xavier's wedding ring. He sent me a note, and all it said was, 'Goodbye.' My parents, his parents, nobody will tell me where he is. His roommate rudely told me what I could do with myself. They want me to pay all the wedding fees, as well as the co-pays for Xavier's hospital and the care facility. Who's they? My parents and Xavier's parents.
Why can't they understand that it's not my fault? Xavier's reaction was so extreme. It was only the cheater challenge. Why is everybody taking a little prank so seriously? And Xavier, I don't care if you had a heart attack. It was only a prank. Stop being a damn wimp and stop ghosting me. We are still engaged, and I demand you call me so we can reschedule the wedding. I looked at Branson, unsure what to say, but it was Grandpa who answered. Do you still love him? That died, Grandpa, I said. The day of the wedding, and these videos just cremated it. Grandma felt my forehead, saying, Xavier, you look so tired and feel a little warm. I think you've had too much excitement for one night. Do you want me to take you home? Branson asked. The fear I'd been holding inside started to leak out, and I said, Can we slow dance for a minute? It sounds weird. I need... Branson allowed himself a little smile, took my hand, and said, You need someone to hold you, and I can be that someone. But first, a selfie, Haley said, and then I'll pack up your food. Maybe throw in a few extra fries and a couple of beers to go. It didn't matter what the band played. We slow danced in the corner. Branson's arms were strong, his body warm. The way he spoke relaxed me. Sometime as we danced, he ran a finger across the small scar just under my collarbone and whispered how he could dance with me all night. We talked and danced, and I think I fell in love. I laid my head on his shoulder, again, feeling his shoulder blades as I hugged him. We were close. I heard his heartbeat, strong, steady, comforting. Maybe we were too close, maybe dangerously close. His lips were warm and tender, his breath soft, and I lost myself in our kiss. Had I ever surrendered to Stephen's kiss like this? Had I ever been this vulnerable? We stared into each other's eyes. His eyes were gentle, caring, and quick to smile. Maybe it's wrong to love again because it's only been a few weeks, but I let myself fall in love with this hard-working, honest man. I wasn't as strong as I thought. My legs began shaking, and I would have fallen except Branson kept hold of me. He said, I've got you, and he picked me up in his strong arms. Grandpa opened the door while Grandma brought my backpack and the food. I snuggled into Branson's arms, feeling safe. Haley informed the crowd not to worry, that I had just gotten out of the hospital, and this was my first night celebrating with my physical therapist. It wasn't exactly true, but close enough. I had overdone it. I fell asleep halfway to the outback, but I was aware enough to feel Branson's strong arms as he tucked me into bed. The next day, my grandparents gave me back my phone. The first thing I did was delete Stephen's contact information and block his number and delete all his texts. It should have been difficult. It should have left me sad. I rubbed the pacemaker scar and remembered the wedding. It wasn't hard at all to delete my ex. Why did Stephen seem so immature now? Maybe nearly dying had changed how I looked at life. I rode with Branson every day, and as I got stronger, I helped around the ranch with chores like feeding the chickens or simple cleaning or helping Grandma cook for the guests. Who knew? I was actually a good cook. I learned all her recipes, and we tried out anything that looked fun. My favorite place to help were the stables. I could work with horses for hours, and it became my job to keep the tack, bridles, and horse blankets clean while oiling the saddles. Once I got the hang of it, I fed the horses too. Grandpa was in his early 70s and slowing down, so I took care of all the horses and helped hook the cattle to the milking machines. It was a lot of work, but I loved it. I regained my strength, learned about the ranch, and resumed college, though it was online. Every weekend, Branson and I were regulars at one of the bars, usually Scotty's. It took a while, and I was always careful, but my heart became strong enough to kick up my heels line dancing. Sometime in October, I moved into the ranch hand apartment with Branson. Christmas time, we hosted my family and his family at the ranch. His parents and younger sisters traveled from North Platte, Nebraska, while mine came from Vegas. Outside of Zoom calls, I hadn't seen my brother or Celia or Mom and Dad for months. They couldn't believe that I was the same person I had been earlier. That also brought my clothes, textbooks, and miscellaneous things from Vegas. Though I recognized my old things, they seemed like another person's stuff. My life had done a 180 in only a few months. The day after Christmas, in front of all our families, Branson gave me a very special Christmas present. We were married, after which my grandparents made an announcement that changed mine and Branson's lives even more. My grandparents wanted me and Branson to run the Outback, and we'd inherit it eventually. I converted my studies to a double major, business and animal science. A year after I arrived at the Outback Ranch, Branson and I were taking a break and riding the General around the track. Red was tied close by. I was in the lead position, with Branson behind me, holding my waist. Our sweaty shirts lay across the nearby fence. I would always have to be careful because of my heart condition. But thanks to Branson's love, the panic episodes had disappeared. I half turned around in the saddle and kissed him. Branson's phone rang. He answered it, and his eyes grew dark, almost angry. Then he hung up. "What's wrong?" I asked. Somehow, I knew I wouldn't like the answer. "Where's your meds?" Branson asked. "In my backpack, up in our apartment," I said. "What happened?" "Haley called and gave Grandma a heads up," Branson said. "We've gotten so close over the year that he called my grandma and grandpa Grandma and Grandpa. They loved it. So did I." About an hour ago, Stephen was at Scotty's asking for directions to the ranch. She thinks he's headed this way. Haley would have called sooner, but it was the lunch rush. "How did he find me?" I asked. Even after a year, knowing Stephen was near made me nauseous. The General must have sensed my unease because she stopped walking. "What number are you?" Branson asked. It took me a minute to think because I haven't had a panic episode for a long time. "Maybe a 5, I said. Branson gave me a squeeze. "Just remember that I love you and I will stand by you." "If I said a higher number, would you kiss me?" I flirted. "Let's find out," he said. "How about a 6? I asked. We were riding and, naughty kissing and letting the General lazily walk around the track when Grandma yelled, "Xavier, Branson, save that kind of thing for the bedroom. You have a visitor." She did not sound happy. Grandma approached the track, my backpack in one hand and a bag with a couple of unopened water bottles and some apples in the other. Stephen Adler, my ex, walked beside her, his eyes wide. No doubt he'd seen me and Branson kissing. Oops. Steve held a dozen roses, carried a heart-shaped box of chocolates, and he wore a stylish suit and tie. He wore a head strap with a GoPro camera attached. It was aimed at us and made me uncomfortable. Were we the stars of his next video? Was I about to have another coronary? Branson softly rubbed the pacemaker scar just below my collarbone and whispered, "Do you think it would distract you if I mentioned that I had a bottle of wine chilling back at the apartment?" I took hold of the General's reins, and we rode up to Grandma and Stephen. Grandma's eyes displayed her concern as she said, "I hope you guys don't mind me going into your apartment, but I wanted to get your backpack, just in case. What number are you?" "A 5. I'm fine, Grandma," I said, while Branson dismounted. "2 questions," I asked. "Steve, how did you find me? And why?" Stephen waited until I had dismounted before he began speaking. Wasn't he hot in that suit? "Your parents never blocked me from their social media, and they posted a picture of you at Scotty's Bar and Grill," he said. "You're looking good." "No thanks to you," Branson said. "Your little prank put Xavier in the hospital. Why come back now?" "Haven't you been following my channel?" Stephen asked. Branson and I looked at each other.
Grandma muttered something that sounded like, "Oh, brother." I simply shrugged and said, "No." Stephen sort of nodded before he said, "A lot of my followers left me." "Why?" Branson said. "They thought it childish for what happened on our wedding day," Stephen said. "Xavier has finally healed after what you did to him," Grandma said. "So why reopen old wounds?" "You see," he said, holding out the roses and the chocolates, "I'm hoping that if they see a live apology, I'll get popular again. I also wanted another chance. I missed you, Xavier. You had a year to rethink your decision and think about what we meant to each other. I admit that I acted like a jerk, but you have to understand, I thought it would only be a funny way to make our ceremony memorable. I want you to forgive me for making a little mistake, and I will forgive you for being a little too dramatic. We were good together. Let's try again." "Are we live streaming?" I asked. "We are," he said. "My viewers told me that I needed to apologize, and this way they can see the apology. That scar, is it new? What happened?" Branson hugged me from behind and gently ran a finger along the scar and said, "Do you mean the pacemaker? It's the newest model. After all, it was your wedding present. Because of your cruelty, my husband's heart stopped." Stephen stepped back a little. "Husband?" Grandma unzipped my backpack and said, "It was a mistake letting this man on the ranch. Branson, would you help me escort Stephen off the property?" "I'm a 6, Grandma. I'm okay," I said, and spoke directly to Stephen's camera. "Hi, everybody. I'm Xavier, formerly of Las Vegas. Thank you for worrying about me. That was nice. Let me present Branson, my new husband. He nursed me back to health after what Stephen had done. Is there any chance of me getting back together with Stephen? No. Do I have any feelings for Stephen? His little prank squashed my love and my respect. I never want to see Stephen again, which is why I deleted him from my phone and blocked him. I do have a lot of feelings for my new husband. I love Branson with all my heart. And now, a special offer to all of Stephen's followers. If any of you are in Wyoming, come see us at the Outback Ranch. Mention you saw me on Stephen's channel, and I'll give you 10% off when you schedule your stay. Call us." I gave the phone number. "Nothing like free advertising," Grandma said. Branson held me tighter, and he said, "Stephen, say goodbye. Xavier, you, me, bedroom, now." "Horses first," Grandma scolded. Okay. First we take the horses to the stables and rub them down," Branson said. "And then it's—" Branson whispered the rest. I made Grandma giggle when I turned to face Branson, wrapped my arms around him, and kissed my hard-working, honest, sexy husband. "I think I'm at a 10, I whispered in his ear as seductively as I could. "Only one cure," my husband said. Branson picked me up, cradling me in his arms, and on live stream, we naughty kissed. The end. I'm Gio, and I want to say thank you for joining me, and thank you for visiting my channel. It's fun having you here. We'll see you next Wednesday. Peace.